Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Sexy Business Podcast. As always, I am one of your lovely hosts, Lewd Neko, and joining me today is Spooky Dangerous.
The unlovely one.
And today we have another very special interview episode. We have Lewd Logic from Critical Bliss joining us tonight. Say hello.
Somebody please help me. I was taken against my will, and hopefully this part isn't edited out.
Bold of you to assume that we do any, if at all, editing on our stuff. It's pretty loose. But yeah, so basically we wanted to get you on for a little while because we have actually done a couple of Critical Bliss episodes, like games that you guys have worked with in the past. And you and I met because a mutual friend of ours was like, hey, Spooky, do you want to come on and work and do some writing stuff? And I'm like, sure, I'll see what's up. But obviously, THM has way overcommitted with the stuff that we're working on, so it was really hard for me to say yes. But obviously, didn't want to waste the meet and greet, so I was like, I'll just say the least cringe thing of all time. Do you want to come on to my podcast so that we can come and talk about some of your games? But to just quickly name drop from the top of my head, we've done Free to Fix, Dick Dine and Dash, we've done Flip Witch, we've done Orc Massage, we've done there was a fourth one as well. I remember
Love Sucks.
Yeah, Love Sucks. And so what's new and what's happening, and maybe we'll come back to some of those games as we go along. But
So I think first things first, just to kind of get us started, just give us like a little brief overview of like what's your role at the company, or like to the average Coomer. How would you explain what you do?
Again, like I said, I'm here against my will. Like, please, somebody save me. I ain't joking. Just said. Generally speaking, I take on a lot of different roles. It depends on the project that we're working on. Depends on the role. I can wear a lot of different hats. So sometimes I'm primarily just like a publisher guy. So like I would just be like, hey, algorithms, look at data, yada yada yada. And then there's some times where like I give more stricter, like I do some art direction here or there. I'm a very hands-on kind of guy when it comes to how Critical Bliss runs as an environment. So generally just depends on the project, depends on whether it's a project where I can leave some of my own people that I have to their own devices. Sometimes they need my advice or my direction more directly because of my marketing expertise. Yeah, kind of a jack of all trades, quote unquote CEO, if you will. It's kind of like so that's kind of what goes on. It's kind of hard to explain, but I just do things.
yeah, I mean, I'm kind of the same. It's if it needs doing, either I do it or I find a person in my team that can do it for me.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's kind of difficult to find like actually people that can do the whole Steam thing.
Yeah.
Steam is a fucking nightmare on a right, and it's a very, very difficult platform to navigate if you don't know what the fuck you're doing. But generally speaking, apart from that, yeah, I'm always looking for good help, and especially people who jive with the kind of environment that we are trying to do, and which is distinctly different from what everybody else does with adult material. I have a big feeling you guys can kind of see that with some of the titles that were really released, especially recently over the course of like the past 3 years. So yeah, like 3-4-ish years. So yeah, yeah. And again, yeah, like seriously, somebody save me. So go ahead.
You only get released after the 30 minutes. You know the deal.
God damn it.
And look, he's not reading from the cue cards either. We've let him take it into his own hands, and that's on us.
So yeah, but generally speaking, that's a very fun position. I have the way that I like to view quote unquote businessy stuff. I try my best to, like I always like to say people that my artsy brain and my business brain are kind of like two things kind of like fused together, you know? They're pretty well connected and they fuck a lot. Like my art brain and my business brain, like they have constant sex all the time and shit like that. And it's very, very rare, right? When one has to be like, okay, hun, I gotta split up, right? Because I have to focus on this side or that side. I usually try to take those two things into consideration on what I do think. So, for example, my business brain comes in and says, oh, we need to make a immensely high quality product, right? To make as much wish list as possible so that when the time comes to sell the product, right, it makes a lot of money. Duh, right? But then the art brain is like, yes, but I also want it to be have like some of the best pixel art in the industry. I want it to also have like 150 animations with just the sprite with pixel art. I want to have like full blown studio like 2D animation, just crazy shit, right? I want like, and that's kind of like what ends up happening. And so generally, a lot of my projects that I make, especially Critical Bliss focused projects, are more long term kind of things. And sometimes sometimes I catch inspiration a little bit on the fly. New things come up that are like, oh, we probably can integrate that shit, or new executions may come in that gives me inspiration to try something new. But we definitely make games more like a big studio thing. So it's not like, so while it still has a indie atmosphere, right? There is most definitely like particular roles that specific people have and things of that nature, but it works a lot like Valve's system of work, where a lot of the people who are really, really good at the roles just kind of naturally uh, kind of rise up to that role instead of it being like directly assigned. Like some people are a lot better at just doing direction than others. And but to maintain morale, and maintain like respect for each other, I like people to attain that through actual merit instead of me just being like, oh, you're the art director now. Like if you have to kind of earn that position. And no, and then generally, and most, and labels aside, yeah, right? Even if you're the art director, that doesn't necessarily make you any better than anybody else, right? It's very important that everybody keeps their egos in check, and and you're taking on this role because you feel like you're the best suited to do so, not power tripping. So that's kind of a thing we do here. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about how this all kicked off. How did you get started and kind of come into this position to be able to work with so many different talent and projects?
Wow. Let me see. Quick history. Got out the military. I got out like really quick, super nutshell history. Got out the military. Was a medic. Was originally going to be like a doctor, well, not a doctor, a paramedic or a nurse. That I went in the military during the Iraq period, and it was just kind of a fucking, not a, not the best time. Okay, this is right. So yeah, that's the best way I can put it. I get out, and then ultimately, I'm dealing with my I hate the world, I hate human nihilism and shit like that. That usually some soldiers will end up having. Grew out of it, but during that time frame, my mom needed some medical assistance, and lucky me, I have medical powers now. So I was helping her out, and shit like that for a bit while trying to figure out what the fuck I wanted to do. Eventually, I started to notice. Eventually, I went, and then of course, typical parents are like, yeah, you 22-year-old fuck, you need to go to college. College is free for you technically because of the military, so you might as well do that." And I'm like, okay, whatever. I'll go and do something like graphic design or something. I can draw. I know how to draw shit, so whatever. So I go do that, and then halfway through college, my teacher, my one of my teachers basically came to me and said, "You need to get out of graphic design." And I was like,
Damn.
"Why?" Because it's ass, and you need an actual real degree, because you actually have like some degree of like actual talent in a future. And I'm like, oh wow, that's really rude. Sure though,
Nice.
right? So I ended up specializing in visual communications and marketing stuff. And I specifically focus on minimalistic marketing, which is a style of marketing taught by my fucking professor, whatever, that is based on marketing material, right? With very limited resources. Okay. So instead of like paying for big stuff or big viral campaigns, how can you put yourself out there without any like a lot of money, right? When it comes down to it, like, to like force it. So I'm like, so yeah, I go there, pass with flying colors, we're cool, and then I get out and I'm about to graduate, and then, oh no, around the time that I graduated, my the college that I went to got caught for fraud and got
Oh.
basically removed. So that was funny. Anyway, okay, so that ended up happening, and then I was like, all right. During that time in college, I ended up founding a place called Lewd Gamer. Currently, it's down at the moment, and probably indefinitely. I want to back up at some point, but it's probably going to be something different at a time. Why it's down, don't worry about it. Life sometimes just, toss you some bullshit, and sometimes that bullshit was just around a little too long. But whatever. But during that time frame, I started LG, and I started doing the whole, and a lot of my big motivations of doing Lewd Gamer was, yeah, I'm a horny fuck. Well, I was 15-year-old jacking off to Newgrounds.
Hell yeah.
Fucking like
Oh yeah.
tentacle. I remember fucking like Tentacle Girl. I'm 16,
Sometimes.
thinking that Tentacle Girl is like the fucking hottest fucking thing ever and shit like that, losing my fucking mind, classic shit from Newground stuff. But I ended up actually gravitating to like line Marvel stuff, and which focus a lot more on Japanese games, so specifically the Dojin market. So I came from a place I used to hang out all the time is ULMF. Like, it's hilarious. It's like a really niche environment now, but it was a big thing at the time during like the Hong Fire era. Like Hong Fire was a big place for 3D people, like 3D things like Artificial Academy and a lot of illusion games. So it's, the classical forms period. And but I was focused a lot on Dojin games, and that's kind of because they had a little bit more gameplay and shit like that. I focused a lot, honestly, on H games with gameplay. Like I completely gravitated away from any of like the visual novel circles and went into this weird place, that DL site was kind of promoting for. So things like classic stuff like Violated Heroine, VH is really, really big. Shout out to the, Hentai General on VG on 4chan. That's a hangout place too. And generally speaking, yeah, that kind of environment is kind of where I fostered a lot of general interest. However, there was one thing that I always had an issue with, and that's porn games being able to attain like the same, like like being held back considerably in comparison to the safer work industry. There's always been something as a marketer guy that's been bugging me. Like, why the fuck can't porn games, be something that we can actually make and monetize and all kinds of stuff, right? So, then Patreon comes into play, right? And then on Steam, during the 2015 period, 2014, 2015, this is around the time where Steam was like, should we have these visual novels on our platform? And shit like that. And it was like very contentious that during that time, debatable whether VN should exist on Steam, primarily because it kind of introduced the whole thing of the all ages thing, right?
Yeah.
You have people like doing the whole all ages stuff and stuff like that of games like Fate Stay Night, Clanad, and shit like that that clearly have like they're eroge, they have sex in them, and they're just stripping away that stuff. That was a big thing for Necopara too, and then of course you have stuff like Honey Pop. You have that also came out, and that's like during the patch era of Steam. Around that time, Patreon starts kicking off. And we, and another big thing, shout out to Kay Kiryu, right? He's a a big inspiration to on the whole, like, can we make porn games good? He's the guy who made Kurovatis, a really classic platformer from 2012. It's like crazy. It was around the time where I came out of the military. And that also showed to me that, we can make porn games with like better gameplay. Like we don't have to settle for less in comparison to the rest of in comparison to what safe for work gaming provides to people like Hollow Knight and Silksong. There's no reason why we can't aspire for the same kind of quality standards, right? Um, and yeah, so I go back to the whole Lewd Gamer thing. So I did the LG as a means to be supportive in this environment. I'm like, hey, let's start a website that seriously covers a lot of the that seriously covers these games. Everybody was kind of shitting on them at the time. Kotaku was talking shit. All the other places, all these other video game places were just like, talking shit about these icky icky fan service games showing up on Steam, like the Sakura game stuff. So that's a big thing. I'm like, fuck that. We're gonna counter that by making like an actual platform. It was relatively successful. I would say that harsh reality did get kicked in though, where I realized that unfortunately making actual money with that kind of platform to support people was really, really difficult. I ended up the only people who were willing to actually give me any substantial cash that I could live on or at least focus on paying my people, right, was from Nutaku, and that didn't really work out as well as it could, right? But ultimately, the biggest problem really was that I'm not gonna sell make your dick bigger ads on my platform. Like I wanted to do it. I wanted to do it without any of that bullshit. I wanted to do it ethically as best as possible. But the ability to do that was very difficult at the time. Um, or it still is. Like there's not really a lot of sponsorships that's willing to, fucking cover a website talking about girls with giant dicks getting fucked by tentacle monsters. Okay,
Hey
like what are you
yo,
gonna do?
where do I sign
Yeah,
up? That sounds like my bag.
I know, right? So, so a lot of lessons were learned. I eventually realized that I would have to be able to monetize. I would have to do something a bit outside of the box of journalism. I always wanted to make games and things of that nature, and so I just kind of and an opportunity. Oh yes, I did a lot of consulting for other companies that people probably know about, right? Like straight up. I have the accolades. Rakishun was the owner of Kagura Games back in the day.
Oh.
Part of the reason for his success with the Fallen Machina was me giving him consulting advice for Steam successes before I even became a publisher. And part of the reason why Kagura Games was able to become Kagura was for me to guide Rakishun with the right with the to making sure his translation was good, and how to manipulate the Steam environment at the time when it was a lot easier for him to be able to get a success. At the time, we had like a platform called Sakura Game that was just doing a shit job with shitty ass machine translated games that they were just spamming all over Steam. I was just getting sick and tired of it. We needed a guy that at the very least was going to do a good job translating these DL site games and stuff like that, right? I would have done it, but I had different aspirations, and at the time, I just didn't really have the time due to a certain situation I was in, living in my car and shit like that. So I really didn't have the ability. Yeah, I did. Got kicked out of my house because I made porn game kind of shit.
Yeah, I feel
That
that.
wasn't exactly the reason. That wasn't exactly the sole reason why me and my dad stopped getting along, but it was most definitely one that they could use as a good excuse, right? So anyway, because they're like, oh, you're making porn, get out of here. That's not a real job, type of shit. So, um, so like. So I did a little bit of stuff in the background. Technically, I helped out my man Kiryu. I helped him get Oroko onto Steam too before I became his publisher, officially later. And just to kind of just to test a few theories of how Steam works. And I was able to get some of these people successful pretty early. And when I was ready to go into publishing, right, I was able to snag an opportunity talking to a really good friend of mine, Cypress Data, who gave me the ability to publish Snow Days, and it was all up, and it was all basically uh, good from there. Then
Yeah.
I'm now here. Yeah,
It sounds
so
like you had been spinning those exact wheels to know exactly what you needed to be doing to become the publisher you are now without kind of realizing you were already doing that.
basically, like and don't get me wrong, I trust me, like I've had my fair share of failures. There's a Kickstarter project that I tried to do back in the day, that still I owe to people, right? To be fair, um, due to the fact, I mean, I refunded a lot of the money to a whole bunch of people already, but there's still but I still feel. And everybody's like, you should just cancel it. You're never gonna do the thing, but but it's still most definitely something I feel like I still need to do, even if things didn't work out. Like my lead artist, his name was Lastric K. He just ended up dying, so that kind
Oh.
of really heavily derailed everything. And at the time, my direction skills wasn't the best either. Right? So I probably wouldn't have picked Lastric in the first place because I like shit like the super degenerate shit like Tanama Nasagi. And to be fair, Lastric wasn't exactly the best pick even then. For the kind of more visceral adult presentation that I like. He's more of a normal pinup guy, so he's not going to really go very expressive with his posing. But regardless of that, I was willing to kind of work with it. Um, but he ended up having to he passed away, and that kind of just derailed the entirety of the project. And then whenever I brought in a new artist, or right, well, Nido's been great, mind you, but Nido, we got busy with other stuff. But the other couple artists that I got just didn't work out, so I'm like, I can't really make this visual novel if I can't get artists to actually do their job.
Yeah.
Right? And but there was that, and to be fair, it's not just that either. I got distracted with publishing as well, and also basically fixing the problems that I was having with demons. Like I needed to learn. I needed to figure out that it was in over my head at the time. I just thought it was so easy. There was this game called Catch Canvas, right? That only had like 8 CGs sold on Steam at the time, and no alternates, by the way. And I'm just like, I can do that. I can easily do that. But the problem when it really came down to it is that I could have done that. But then I start making the game, I start making the visual novel, and I quickly realize that I'm not the type of person that can just make a quick cash grab. I just
Yeah.
can't do it.
Can't do it bad.
So
Have to do it
that,
good.
yeah, that's kind of the shocking realization at the time. That's why my marketing teacher will always say I will be a 9 out of 10 because I have morals. So,
Yeah.
okay, she's like, what? She's like, I'm one of your best students ever, but your morals will hold you back. And I guess in that particular case, she was right. But at the same time, I do not regret my decisions. I am in a far better place to lead than I ever was back in 2017.
But you're also in an
So
industry
yeah.
where the sisterhood is everything, right? Like if you are abusing other people that work in there, if you are running it inappropriately or illegally or unmorally, people will stand up and call you out and refuse to work with you, and all of your stuff will crumble. Whereas a lot of other industries, especially if you're in an upper position, it's very easy to trample on people and no one can really do anything about it. But because everyone is like singular and requires cooperation and stuff like that within the adult field, it is very hard to get somewhere large by taking advantage of people.
Yeah, that well, so to be honest, I'm not gonna lie to you. That is still possible even in our industry. I've seen plenty of shit where that happens. So we're not immune. I will say though that for me, I maybe not necessarily as much now, but my philosophy of adult game creation is just basically heavily diopposed to a lot of the adult space, especially right. Maybe not so much now. I think the realization that we need to make higher quality products is something that is now sinking into people. But back in the day was definitely more kumbaya-ish. You know, like everybody's just making the best thing that they can make. Right? We shouldn't criticize people's work because that's gonna hurt their feelings and shit like that. Okay, that kind of kumbaya shit. And that's what my business brain kicks in. That kind of kumbaya. I am not here to basically perpetuate mediocrity. I very much so carved out my own space completely because there's just a lot of people who are just kind of like those pat on the back, fucking participation trophy kind of shit. And I think you can see for yourself, right? If with me in the comparison of a lot of other publishers and developers, I am talking shit, right? That I'm in a whole other league, right? And that's primarily because of that kind of mentality, right? I push adult games to basically be the same quality as best as I can to safer work. That is my dream. My dream, well, if you want to call it that, is or good business practice is to make quality games that's even the safer work market has to acknowledge that they are fantastic, right? That they're still missing out by not playing this title. I want people to play Flipwitch, right?
Yeah.
Even if they're not interested in titties and things of that nature, I want them to play it because they're just missing out on a good experience
A good
in the
Metroid
first place.
game. That was
right?
literally when we covered that game. That was like one of the main complaints that I had was that it was a good Metroid game first and a horny game second, which is really funny
Yeah.
because you've come on here and you've gone, "We made a good Metroid game first and a horny game second."
The funny thing is that oh my god, the funny thing is that like I said, I made I made Flipwitch together with Momo, right? But bless Momo's heart, right? But part of the reason why the adult aspect of Flipwitch isn't necessarily as strong as I would like it, primarily came from a mentality that Momo had at the time that I wish that we had cleared up earlier, which we did. We ended up clearing up. That's part of the reason why, fucking characters makes you more powerful. Initially, Flipwitch was supposed to be done. The Flipwitch was you could completely ignore the adult content in Flipwitch, and just play the game. Right? I was the one pushing heavily for the power set and for the age content to actually be further integrated into the adult experience. But again, I deal a lot more with safe for work creators converting over to adult. Not to say that they're not passionate about adult stuff, right? But they still come from this mindset of them having to of basically trying to appease to the safer work market, and they're not really doubling down on what makes the adult market great. It is very it has happened multiple times. It's happened with Butt Night, surprisingly. It's happened with Flipwitch, and so it's a common thing. It's a common thing that I always sometimes end up having to fight against. Like a funny thing happened recently where a guy was saying that one of the clients I'm going to be working with, he was really adamant on having a non, like, basically you start the game, and despite the game is like about some of the, like, it's darkest dungeon with porn, okay? It's darkest dungeon with porn. All right. So already you're sitting there and you probably got an image in your head on how insanely fucked up that game is going to be, right? Like it's like corruption of champions tier of fucked up from the perspective of degeneracy. despite how fucked up the game is, right? Despite that would be essentially our marketing. Like that's how we're gonna market the game. Anybody who would be at all interested in this material, especially with our marketing, would come to it for its degenerate non-con like presentation, right? Right?
Yeah.
But they want to put in a shut off all the non-consensual scenes button in the beginning of the game. And I'm like, what? Like I get where it's coming from, right? Like that again, it's that need to appease, right, and provide. And I guess it's technically harmless, but it's kind of weird. It doesn't necessarily, because personally that already means that your game is going to be develop compromise in a sense. Like the adult content has to be now built in a way where it's easy to remove, and that's a problem, right? If your game can be stripped of its adult nature and be playable, that's a problem for me, right? That isn't necessarily the it's necessary. It should be hard to censor your game, is what I'm saying. And it's a problem for me for the sake of. Let me specify. It's a problem in a sense that we haven't solved the problem yet on what we need for an H game to be, right? And a really good example of that, for me, the best kind of H game is Dead Space.
Okay.
Right? Now you're probably like, what the fuck is this guy fucking talking about? Like Dead Space is like a horror game. And I'm like, yeah, bear with me, right? Like, and don't get me wrong, some people also like really get off on the fetish part. I'll go back to on the fetish part specifically in a lot of H games on the more submissive character that gets thrown into a crazy situation. They get fucked two ways from Sunday, right? And all kinds of shit like that by whatever the fuck they run into, you know? But the problem with engaging with any of that material, it requires you playing like shit. That is the issue, right? You have to play badly. You have to deliberately lose in a game, right? For you to actually see the cool shit anyway, okay? So, but see, the thing is, I'm not saying you take out that shit, right? Like, that's like saying, hey, Dead Space, because I am actively trying to stay alive, you need to remove all the visceral killing scenes that the necromorphs can do in Dead Space. Right? What's the point of them being there, right? If you can just, if the point of the game is me not dying, right?
Yeah,
and the point is because, yeah, the point is it's stakes, tension. It helps build the atmosphere. It sells the danger. You need to have that there. But the problem is when that's the only thing you have, all right? And if that is the only thing that you're gonna have, then you should facilitate the game design to basically be about losing, right? And if you are going to lose, then the player has to play the game normally, like a normal game, and still experience that loss, right? So that they can get off on things. There's a better way, gameplay-wise, to do that, right? But back on the Dead Space thing, like it just make a fucking roguelike, nigga. It's like easy anyway.
Exactly.
Like on a Dead Space case, right? Isaac may be in a perilous situation. He is in over his head, right? Clearly, he's just an engineer and things of that nature. But you know what he can do? Chop those motherfucking creatures up, dude. Right? You get the same kind of visceral, maybe not exactly the same kind, but you're still being able to dish out some damage. You're able to, like in an H game, you're able to do sexual things to all these enemies that are around you and things of that nature, right? However it needs to happen, right? The player is getting rewarded, right, by still being able to, by playing the game normally. And if they just so happened, right, to get, get fucked by an alien they didn't see coming their way, okay, but that helps sells the dangers, helps sells the tension, right? And that is primarily my goal. My goal is the problem is doing games like that is expensive. The main issue with H game development is that it will always be significantly more work than safe for work development. That is the truth. Any safe for work game that you can think of, right? if you would have made a porn game version of it, you need still more assets to sell the adult nature of the title. That's just the thing. So a really good example is Mega Man. Making Mega Man X is already pretty hard. Now make Mega Man X with porn,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
You know, that is the curse of adult game development. That's also the reason why I'm like, we need to make actual money. We need to bust ceilings, right? We need to increase our quality standards and things of that nature. Because for a game as great as, like, say, Hollow Knight, like, or Blasphemous and things of that nature, we will always have to be blasphemous and more every time, right? It is even more important for us to have a good team with good art, with good artists, with good sound designers, with good designers in the first place. We need it more than any other medium. As soon as you put the adult aspect on that, right? Immediately the standards of what an adult game needs increase. Now, mind you, the trade-off is, right? Well, sure, you need more assets, sure, to make an adult game, but the standards are so much lower that we can just make some shitty RPG Maker game and call it a day, okay? And we're good. But the problem with that is that the standards for Steam has now just massively increased over time, right? Back in 2018, you can kind of get away with that. But the novelty of adult is running dry, and now people are like, "Yeah, I want my titillation, but I don't. But I shouldn't need to settle for a game that barely works, right? Or for a game that has boring execution in terms of its game design. I have other games that have shown to me, Critical Bliss titles, right, that adult games can be actually well made. What's your excuse?" Right? And that has happened. That has happened throughout, and will only significantly get worse for developers over time. So again, that's part of going back to the Kumbaya stuff. I did separate myself from that environment and carve my own space because I knew that void was eventually going to come, and if I'm going to face that void, I want to be the most prepared that I can. Right. So yeah, there you go.
I mean, I think that connects really well into like the reason why we do this podcast, or at least part of the reason is like, I mean, part of it is we just wanted to talk about like, games and feet and stupid stuff like that. But I think another major part of it was, it's so hard to market and promote this kind of content, especially right now when we're dealing with all of this like censorship and stuff. And
Oh
so it
yeah,
is nice
yeah.
to know that, like, when we have people like you on here or other devs or artists or, voice actresses or whatever, that they're able to get like at least a little bit of promotion. I mean, part of why I've been streaming for the past 5 years is when I originally started off, I wasn't even doing like cam work. I was just on NSFW websites because I wanted to play NSFW games. And a really big motivator for me was I liked adult games. I thought they were really good and I wanted more people to play them. And so I thought, I'm a girl. I should use my girl powers to get people to look at these video games that maybe they would have never looked at.
Yeah, everybody contributes in their own way. My way is to show to show essentially casual adult fans, mind you, who, to be fair, for the longest time, right? You know what a casual adult fan, like a person who thought that adult games was, when you go to Google, you type in hentai games, and you just see like fucking just shitty flash sites, right?
Meat and
With
Fuck
shitty
Kingdom.
ass fucking meat or whatever. That's what I'm talking about. It took a long time for us to kind of get out of that mindset. Now, luckily, because of us continually, luckily because of Steam opening the gates, they have allowed our industry to push itself and flourish, right? Steam has a bunch of problems, but it did open the gates. It allowed for games like Subverse or Org Massage to spread its wings amongst the international scale and show to, like, fucking Markiplier played Org Massage, right?
Yeah,
It allowed so many, yeah, it allowed a lot of it allowed a lot of our industry to actually truly be displayed. And now people are like, oh, porn games are more than just shitty ass flash games that are on shitty websites filled with a whole bunch of shitty ads. We have finally been able to escape that because that was very debilitating to our growth in the first place. But again, the only way to escape these trappings that we even still to some degree suffer from this day is to take the platform seriously and maybe apply a little bit of business into your art. It's not a bad thing, especially if you're focusing on providing consumers with better experiences, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah.
All right, now as we are reaching the end of the episode, we must ask you the pinnacle question upon all questions that we ask all of our guests. Who's your number one waifu or husbando?
My wife and my wife.
Okay, first of all, based. Second of all, we do actually mean a fictional character.
The anthropomorphic version of my wife. I'm joking.
My wife
If I
in the
was to
outfit of
say,
this character.
if I was to have a waifu, Blaze the cat. Unfortunately, a Sonic. Unfortunately, I know it's a debilitating disease, but I'm unfortunately a Sonic fan, right? So Blaze the cat is my waifu. Yes.
Okay, all right.
Honestly based.
Hell yeah. All right, now, do you want to shout out anything? Do you want to tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, I'm on. Like I said, you can find me on just type Critical Bliss in DuckDuckGo or Google. There you go, you'll find me. That's what people do nowadays. Like, what's the point of me being like, oh, follow me at this place and whatever? Just go to Google, go to DuckDuckGo, go to Start Page, go to whatever you like. Just Google and just follow me, whatever the fuck. I don't give a shit. Go ahead.
Absolutely. And look, some titles.
Whatever I need to get out of this dungeon. All right, just get me the fuck out of here. All right.
Yeah, and you can also go and check out some of the titles that we've played through and talked about. We've done Orc Massage, we've done a whole bunch that you can go and check out on this channel if you want a little bit of a sample of some of the great work Critical Bliss has been doing. And look, you can hit subscribe on our channel, or you can go onto Steam and go and find some Critical Bliss stuff for yourself to go and play. And then we'll see you next time on the Sexy Business Podcast.
Bye bye.
I'm finally free. Awesome.